we live in a very unique environment right now in terms of every Sangha meeting you to go to or every engagement you have, uh, people are emotional and going through their own experiences in their own way. It's really a great opportunity to learning to tap into our practice and deepen the connection with each and every one of them.
Certainly, and I know that you have a lot of experience and a lot of training in eco-chaplaincy. So I know that there might be a lot of help that you can offer with climate anxiety, climate
Yeah,
crises, like things
yeah,
related to that.
yeah, yeah.
And I definitely want to talk about that in a minute. But are there certain like concerns as far as things that are going on with the current administration, kind of things, or anything else in particular that your sanghas are reflecting of the moment?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are a couple of dimensions here. One is obviously the people are committed to Buddhist practice and finding their own way of deepening the practice through not just meditations at settings, but active discussions, understanding the teachings and applying teachings as they see fit. And then suddenly we run into a lot of changes in the administration, like you said, or not. There are it locally, globally, at all levels, and it tests us, right? People are smart, they're experienced, they have gained wisdom through their own life experience all these years, and the question really comes down to is how much of that is helping them face the situation that they are in. What is new about this experience that they aren't really prepared for, right? So sometimes it takes a while for people to figure out, this is not something unique or the first time we as a race or a human race or a group have faced, but it's just different or a new set of challenges. It doesn't, I'm not trying to minimize the impact of the challenges, but I'm just thinking into deeper level of reaching into our own capacity and figuring out how we care for ourselves and how we care for others and how we build that mutual trust and respect to grow both spiritually and practically in day-to-day life.
And do you find that when the temperature is turned up, when things are right in front of you, and the intensity of the changes that are happening and
Yeah,
the pressures are happening are intensified, do you
yeah.
find that the mechanisms that help you bring yourself back to center also change? Do they also kind of go into a different state? Like do the entryways for finding your center adapt to the moment, or do they kind of remain in a tried and true sense, in the sense of vipassana meditation approaches?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the meditation approach is one aspect of it, but understanding the teachings of Buddha in a way we can apply it in our own spiritual growth is a constant reminder for us, right? We live in a living lab, if I would like to call it, right? In a sense, we are obviously going to be facing challenges. Buddha called it dukkha as as a ingredient of life that we have to encounter on a day-to-day basis, and very simple definition in my mind of the dukkha, or some people use the word suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and different terms were used to define that. It really comes down to very two simple questions. One, one is um, uh, we are confronted with an issue that we don't like it, or we are confronted with an issue where we are participating that we are not comfortable with. Okay? And the options there are: can we be make it about ourselves and just and suffer or face the dissatisfaction with that, or do we react impulsively or reactively? Or three, how do you apply wisdom and in a wholesome way? How do you apply this from heart and mind perspective, as the Pali word chitta typically implies, and really find a way to resource ourselves so that we can be of a resource to others?
Mm, mm. And I know that you, as far as like being a resource for others, I know that you are you have graduated from a chaplaincy program through the
Hmm.
Sati Center for Buddhist
Right.
Studies,
Hmm.
and you have for a long time been working with teachers within the Insight community, the Insight Meditation Community Center of Redwood
Yes.
City with Gil Fronsdal,
Well, yes.
and so you have a lot of experience in that training, and as far as like being a resource, I know that you are also a teacher at the San Jose Insight Meditation Community, and also too, you are an instructor at this point at the Sati Center for Buddhist
Hmm.
Studies
Hmm.
within Eco-Chaplaincy. What made you want to get into chaplaincy? Like, what made you want to go from transitioning from someone that practices to someone that is facilitating practice and
Yeah, yeah,
helping
yeah.
people? Mhm.
Yeah, I often wonder how, sometimes how it unfolded, right? So we don't really we think we plan our life to the nth degree of detail, but certain things, there are unique situations in life that offers an opportunity to pivot ourselves, independent or in spite of our intent to be meticulously planning our life. you know so what really happened was, as I was going through my Buddhist practice and really figuring out not just the teachings of Buddha but applying it and growing with it, and I felt a tremendous sense of a comfort in the teaching. I took it literally as the as I say, I took refuge in Buddha, the Sangha, the Dharma, right? And what it really meant to me was, wow, can it be that simple? And of course, I didn't mean I attained the ultimate, but certainly there's a sense of um, contentment that I could create for myself under which I can operate, right? And it is not a fixed point. It is something at that moment I had a latitude in my heart and mind to assess and understand the life that is unfolding in front of me, right? And what it really did to me at that point is it inserted a question into my mind. It can be all about me. It can be all about my satisfaction, right? And this is universal in terms of suffering. And what skills do I lack to be able to not only understand it, but how can be of service? That's a key word I was looking for that unfolded in me. And if I have to look at both of them, doesn't matter. I was probably in the late 50s in my age at the time. I really felt that my life experience and learning and everything else didn't quite give me the confidence or the tools to be able to be that person who can be a resource or of service. And that's what led me into discussions with my teacher, Gil Fronsdal, who I'm eternally grateful for all the directions he set for me and how he has guided me through this path. And that's what opened the doors for understanding what chaplaincy is. Even after going in, I didn't have a preset expectations of what chaplaincy is all about, right? Number one. And the second aspect is, um, how do I learn more about myself, my own capacity to care started to unfold. So it's not like just an external activity of me caring for someone. That's a byproduct. But the intent is self-discovery, learning about myself and really finding out how did I cope with, or how did I deal with, how did I process my own suffering, and how and when and it's relevant to engage with others who may be suffering for their own reasons and connect the bridge. And that's how the whole chaplaincy thing folded. And my education at Sati Center, both as a regular chaplain and an eco-chaplain, is playing a big part of my life today.
Mm. And thank you for offering that where you don't talk about it necessarily as just this external thing that you kind of put on to go and help someone else. This impulse for you or this drive for you to start affecting change or to uh, bringing yourself fully
Yeah,
as an act of service kind
yeah,
of comes from within. It's not like something that you're like, okay, well now I have enough credits in my meditation practice now, and now I'm able to expand upon that. It's like no,
right.
it came from a plumbing of the depths, so
Um,
it allowed you to do that. And then what and I do want to get kind of more into your chaplaincy work, but just while we get into it, while we get into how your practice kind of engage. served as a catalyst for your efforts and service. How did you develop your practice in the first place? Like, how did you find Buddhism? How did you find your teacher? How did that all
Yeah,
develop?
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Um, eh, I was brought up as a Hindu, right? Growing up in India, I came to this country in 1982. And for a while, I was caught up in my own life, education, careers, and all the stuff. So the pivotal point in my life was my dad passing away in 1997. And I really lost a frame of support in many ways. And I can define that. That's when my mom immensely helped me guide me into spiritual life in what we call Vedanta, which is the basis of Hindu philosophy or education or studies. And started to make inroads into that from chanting to understanding the core texts, which is combination of Upanishads as well as which composition of Upanishads is we call Bhagavad Gita, the most sacred of the scriptures, God's teaching, right? And I really love the teaching very much, and that whole notion of understanding the self as a part of the greater self, or how do you really not really let our ego or the role or the personality we take in as the ultimate doer or sufferer was challenged and really educated me in that teaching process immensely. Number one. And what this also did to me was as I was peeling off the layer of Bhagavad Gita and studying that, and I really went back and forth, all 18 chapters, back and forth a few times. And I really got drawn to the chapter 6, which is called Dhyana Yoga or the yoga of meditation. And God makes it very simple to Arjuna about he's telling it to how aspect, how do you cultivate the core aspect of inner growth, and how does that really lead you into that? And that was what I tried to meditate on my own and tried certain things. I never had a formal opportunity as a consistent meditation practice living here in the US in that setting. I went to these ashrams in different places in India a few times, but not the same as having a day-to-day practice at the same time. So that opened up for me really exploring where can I learn to meditate. I stumbled upon uh, set of CDs called The Science of Mindfulness. Right. And it was I think I want to say it was by Dr. Siegel who did that course. And that really caught my attention because me being a bit of a nerd from a scientific side standpoint, and I was listening to it, there was so much reference to Buddhism through that whole process. Huh. So this is, I made a deeper connection between mindfulness and Buddhism just listening to the 30 hours of lessons or whatever it was going through that. And that was my entry in, and I started to literally Google in Bay Area and figuring out where are these Buddhist organizations where I can practice meditation. And that was my entry point. So as I got into that, it didn't take me much time. I really got attracted to the people there in terms of the safety of Sangha and how comfortable I felt in that setting. So that drew me back over and over. I want to be with these people. I want to be around these people. Right. And that's how it started as a weekly practice and turning into daily practice. I started going into retreats and 1 day long retreats, week long retreats, 2 week retreats, 3 week retreats, and started to really evolve. And I started to notice, then I lost track of the science of mindfulness part. And I noticed myself, there is a sense of ease that comes in every time you go through this. Learning the teachings, being with the group, and deepening the practice. And I guess this is where the Buddha Dharma Sangha comes in, and it literally played well into my life. And that's what led me into deepening the practice and connection and unfolding into chaplaincy. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, and I appreciate this element too, where the mindfulness was a technique or something like that that helped you kind of just kind of understand broad strokes something. But then once you started to sit and find these Buddhist communities, because
Yeah.
the mindfulness CDs would reference Buddhism, you would go and you'd sit, and then you felt like this kind of uh, comfortability with the people around you because it was
Yeah.
like a like-minded yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like in a funny way. wow, what's wrong? What's with these guys? They're kind of so happy and relaxed. And they're very friendly. They're giving hugs to total stranger. Uh, you know, and I felt very, very welcome in those settings. My initial trips to Insight Meditation Center, there's a warmth, they're comfortable, the sense of belonging, and all these are kind of interesting English terms and English words we put together, but they still don't really communicate the nature of the experience or the feeling of what that group provides.
Wow. You can't quite articulate it. That's yeah.
Yeah, language always falls short in many, many ways. This is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and while you were investigating this, or while you were exploring your initial first steps into Buddhism, I know that insight plays a major role. The Vipassana Bay Area Vipassana community plays a big role. Did you experiment with other traditions within Buddhism too? Did you kind of poke your head into other centers or other temples or anything like that as you're coming up?
Yeah, the answer is a soft yes, which means uh, the Theravada tradition that I'm on, or the insight tradition I'm on, certainly allowed me to find comfort. Then it opened up to understand and learn about other traditions, for example, Zen. So started to attend some Zen meditation sessions and even very short term, like a 1 week long Zen retreats. And there was definitely understanding of the other aspects of the Buddhism, right? Not for the sake of exploration. And one of the things that fundamentally changed my idea there is I started to become less and less cerebral, so the desire to explore subsided gradually, other than, is there something I need to know? And what is there to know? There is more an inquisition, an inquiry that I was forming within myself. And if I shift the cerebral aspect of the desire that brings in, then I started to stop and ask the question, do I really need it? What feeling in my heart that I'm going to generate as a person? And I really wanted to go deeper in what I have versus go horizontal and explore other things. And there are quite a few Buddhist temples of different types here in Bay Area, and I went and visited them. Some of them sat in prayers, and some of them participated in chanting, and some of them I'm open to understanding the different ways. We are all uh, pursuing whatever spiritual path that gives us the comfort. But certainly, I broaden my understanding of Buddhism as it exists, and try to coexist with all these areas. Yeah.
Yeah, I thank you for going into that. Especially, I appreciate your experience with recognizing what you needed in those moments where, like, sure, like there's this soft yes of yeah, I'm aware, I had been somewhat exploring or understanding other temple communities or centers in my area, but uh, as you deepened your practice, your needs were less cerebral and you were less interested in intellectualizing. And I feel like there can be this uh, want, at least like from my side, for other things that I'm interested in my life. I'll want to if I find a musician that I really like, I'll listen to their entire discography, and then I'll like want to listen to the bands that they're associated with, and then
Yeah.
the whole subculture and all these different things. Where there could be also this less cerebral need of just kind of not necessarily needing to know all the histories of everything. Uh, as part of your practice experience, but letting the experience of your practice do what it's doing and really
Mhm.
allow the impact to happen in a core level, something that's not necessarily academic, not something that's not necessarily anthropologic or
Mhm. Mhm.
anything like that. So thank you for offering that. And then also still you did end up and do have an appreciation and an openness to
Openness.
seeing and
Yeah.
experiencing different things.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you have it's interesting too because you have maintained a connection to Vedanta. Have you
Yeah.
you've
Very much so. Very much so. In fact, one of the things, the Buddhist practice allowed me to have a certain aha moments in Vedanta that I missed it. Right? There are nuances that we cultivate, and it's the same text, the same scripture. But once you develop a practice, grow in, and have that spiritual frame, it's hard to communicate it through words. Then you go back and read that stuff, and you suddenly find the richness of the relevance of the teaching, and appreciate that depth very much. An example of that would be the notion of self is highly discussed in all these aspects, Buddhism as well as Vedanta, in terms of what it is. Uh, and certainly, there's one aspect is the teaching itself, and trying to understand exactly what that means. In that process, the byproduct of that is noticing how much of ego implicitly I was carrying in a day-to-day basis, and how much of that ego turns into burden and basis for my own suffering. And both the areas with the Vedanta side are deeply mostly Buddhist side, allows me to look at the pragmatism of life, or what Buddha called three characteristics of impermanence and not self, and suffering, anicca, anatta, and dukkha, and put that in the context of uh, Vedanta as you are not your body, you are not yourself, and there is a larger self and the cosmic self, and it all this gives you a sense of a belonging that's much much larger and broader in some aspect, and sometimes how big a burden the ego is of identity that we carry with us. Right? And both these teachings continue to educate and let me grow, so that I don't need to take on the role of the sufferer more often than I need to.
Yeah, wow. And in anticipation of our conversation, I looked. I don't. I'm not like by any means an expert in Vedanta. It's very superficial for me. Like my understanding is not very deep. But I know I looked up a little bit of the Sri Ramakrishna mission, and
Mhm.
I also looked into the Chinmaya mission for
Yeah,
Saint Swami
Chinmayananda, yeah, yeah,
Chimayanda.
yeah, yeah.
And I watched a little bit of a video of him, the latter, and he talks about how uh, you understand yourself in relation to other people or something like that,
Right,
where
right,
you're. But then the question comes, but who are you? Like
right.
who are you exactly in
Yeah,
all of this? And it's a difficult question for people that are wrapped up in their associations and applying meaning for themselves through those.
yeah.
And it was fascinating too because I had never seen him speak, Swami Chimayananda, and it's very expressive and it has like a theatrical
Yeah,
quality to it.
yeah,
And I was wondering, is there something to the way that these lessons of Vedanta are communicated through the Sri Ramakrishna um, mission, and like through the people that you've been working through in the Vedanta Center, and also too just within the character of how some of these people speak? Is there something about that that's particularly engaging to you?
yeah. I mean, uh, yeah, I have listened to watch the videos of Swami Chinmayananda as well. They are just so inspiring, so deeply touching in many ways, and not only he is, I would like to call him truly an awakened or enlightened person, but certainly how much of that he used it in the form of service to bring those teachings to so many people is just amazing. Uh, the main thing I would say is uh, both the Vedanta centers from Ramakrishna Mission and the Chinmaya missions around the country, around the globe, are beautiful centers where people continuing to have the platform for spiritual growth. Uh, the the core of that fundamentally is building a discipline of having a practice. I mean, that's where it comes from, right? And once I know you had a question at the end. Can you go back to the question that you asked?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, just is there are there like figures within those things or like teachings that particularly resonated with you? Just because it seems like there are similar formats to maybe Vipassana training where you are listening to Dharma talks or you're
Right.
listening to people speak. Is there something about the way that Vedanta is communicated to you that resonates in particular? And how have things like your work with Vedanta, I guess,
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah.
informed that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, see, once you are in the spiritual frame of mind, you start to appreciate different aspects of it and really see the oneness or one things in common with others. And the core in that is understanding as an internal experience. And what I mean by that is this is purely my interpretation. Uh, I don't have the call it credentials to be the authentic spokesperson. You put it that way. Um, what I Vedanta, and we use the phrase called Shruti Pramanam, which means the scriptures are the authority. Yeah, that comes up very, very strongly. And so all of the teachings here is allowing us to understand the scriptures as they are meant to be. And there's so much richness in those teachings themselves, yeah, which I benefited from understanding. It's continuing to grow. I don't ever claim I understood them enough. It's a continual process of going deeper and deeper, understanding the notion of self and service and all this stuff. Whereas what I learned coming to the Buddhist practice is Buddha laid out certain path or the ways to practice and substantiated with huge amount of anecdotes, teachings, and supporting material, right? And I felt the emphasis shifted from scriptures as an authority to experience as the guide. Yeah. And use your own experience as the guide and see if this will lead you to these aspects. What Buddha did, you take Satipatthana Sutta and you go through the mindfulness of mind, mindfulness of body, mindfulness of mind, feelings, mindfulness dhammas, and you go through that phrase, and suddenly he talks about 7 factors of awakening, right? And some of them arises as you go through this practice, right? And some of them is the effort where you put in. And this is 2,600-year-old teaching, give and take. And those experiences work the way the teachings say they work. And I felt this notion of experience as an authority and scriptures as an authority are not necessarily two different ways of looking at things, but certainly it allows me to practice humility and take both the scriptures and include in my practice.
Yeah, and thank you for offering that because there is this feeling of, well, how well studied am I, and have I read enough of the right books to be thinking about things in a correct way? Am I within the guidelines and the frameworks appropriately for my ability to understand Buddhism or my
Yeah,
practice? But then what is ultimately the information or what the connection that you can get is by doing the practice, is by the experience, because like only you're the only one that can really do that. And then
yeah,
what we talked about before is like when you were connecting with your Sangha initially, you were kind of feeling that you can't quite articulate it feeling, but but
yeah,
you felt the feeling and you trusted that
correct,
feeling. Uh,
correct.
how, how do you cultivate like a trust in your experience? Because I think that especially for maybe for myself, maybe some other people here in America, there is a want to really understand something and to really get the terms down and to be a
Yeah,
good student about something. And at what point, how do you start to turn down a little bit the intensity on those kinds of impulses and
yeah,
actually kind of foster a trust in your own experience?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great question in a sense. it tells you about us human race, where we are today in terms of what kind of a conditionality of learning that we carry with us. Okay, what I mean by that is a lot of things have changed post-industrial revolution, how the oneness, uniqueness, and this isolating many things drew us apart from collectiveness in many, many ways. But I'll come back to that later. But the thing is, uh, it's less about when the three phases to this path. One is obviously studying the elements of whatever Buddha taught or whatever Vedanta says. The second aspect is reflecting on it individually or through groups, and then contemplating on this, what it means to my own journey. Okay? And these three phases are essentially how we become a student of in the path. Okay? The second element to that fundamentally is it's not necessarily learning alone. There is a lot of unlearning that happens. Okay. One example that how much of my default, how I was brought up cerebrally with education, training, work, and all that stuff is comparing and contrasting becomes the basis of evaluation. Sometimes it's not very helpful in the spiritual path, right? If I replace the mindset to comparing and contrasting and replace that by allowing and being with and appreciating and finding love in that as it is without having to interpret what it could be for me, that's a very rich experience, right? So I'm unlearning my default mode network telling me to compare and contrast one versus the other. Why would I even bring that skill into this process? Instead, why can't I just allow it to be the greater human experience and appreciation for the experience as it is? And of course, it is wholesome and it is non-harming. And we bring those precepts into this construct. And there is a richness of satisfaction that line of thinking gives. So in that process, I'm not learning per se as much as I'm unlearning through understanding about myself. Why would I filter my own self?
Yeah, and I know that like for you as a professional, you worked for years as an executive, as an entrepreneur within the tech world. I know that you were uh, within that community, and I'm sure that there is a lot of uh, stimuli for wanting to get something right, or for wanting to be on the right trajectory, and if not yourself, just like meeting other people that are really locked in on one element of life, which is the work element. Uh, did you find that as someone that was having these spiritual experiences and doing these practices, and balancing, and harmonizing Vedanta practice with Buddhist practice, and then going into this workplace, was that ever something that you kind of needed to keep to yourself? Did it feel like the your practices were things that you couldn't really necessarily share with coworkers or colleagues, or did you find that, like, well, these are things that help me stay balanced in this kind of environment? How can I offer these in ways to people here that might benefit them without necessarily preaching, or making it about getting someone spiritually involved?
Yeah, yeah. That's a big transition. That was a big transition for me, right? In the sense, part of the reason I retired when I was around 56 or so was the conflict of my spiritual life and the life in the industry, broadly called that, right? And certainly the capacity to be effective in both, I simply could not do that. So I need to make some decisions. And it was more a personal decision than any other thing of choices I had to make at that time, right? The biggest difference I felt as I look back on it is when I'm in that mode of working for a company, the driving factors are what makes the company successful and what are the objectives. And there are And I would call it a spreadsheet driven life. There are numbers that you need to achieve, and there are goals you need to achieve, and all that stuff. And you really use your capacity and skills to achieve that objective. And success and failure is measured on one's ability to achieve that. What was missing in that is a few things. One is the personal cost involved to participate in that process, because everything is driven by stress and must achieve this, must do this, must get it done by this time, and there's a lot of those things. And the second thing is I get lost in that identity, and that identity overrides my existence, right? So there is a personal price, there's a getting lost in the identity. And the third aspect is we bring that combination of those two things into other aspects of my life, and I expect others to accommodate me in that setting. That was too much, that I was bringing that stress, pressure to the others around me, right? Now, contrasted when I made the transition and got in, is a deeper understanding of different roles and identities I take. And I have a view that this is all a temporary and ephemeral identities or roles. I don't need to get lost in them. I don't need to be consumed by that. And yet, use the role at the level that is needed to achieve an objective and move on. And in that process, it's not absolute term, but I would say there is a sense of freedom that comes in with this view of life.
And did you find that the decision to maybe move away from the must world, the spreadsheet life, and then pursue a life that was freer. Did that feel like it was an easy decision to make? Did it feel like it didn't matter whether or not it was an easy or hard choice? It just kind of flowed that way. You just kind of went with
Yeah.
the way that your life was working. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about that. The two things I would say, one is uncharacteristically, I didn't overthink that problem. I'm an overthinker at that time. In general, I am, but somehow this is it. I'm moving on, and boom. So I didn't really linger on in the transition mode.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
The second thing is, having made the decision, I was committed to the path I want to take. And one of the simple line is, I want to deepen my practice, whatever that phrase means, right? And that could mean studying more scriptures, listening to more talks, being in front of teachers more often, having more meditation opportunities or retreat opportunities, and trying to maximize time. But at the same time, I was cognizant, if I look back the last 8 to 10 years, is I'm less and less and less involved with groups and people that I was involved with before, because I didn't have a sense of belonging there as much as I have a sense of belonging right now.
mm, mm.
So this is not what I intended, but that's how it unfolded.
Yeah. And well, I'm so glad that you for someone that have has like an overthinking element that was guiding a lot to make a move that maybe is relatively sudden, but didn't take too much uh pros and cons, like listing out pros and cons and really trying to understand every nuance of the problem or the change that could develop. You just kind of you just made the decision for yourself, and then through that you found these communities of belonging. You
Yeah,
found belonging maybe with yourself, but you also found belonging with your practice, knowing that you wanted to deepen that, and then also with your Sangha. And I think it's a wonderful, very brave thing to do. And I'm so glad that you did it, because it has launched this, uh, I guess, transformed version of yourself, and it's made you not only someone that is investigating themselves and developing a practice, but you're also doing it to help other people now at this point. You
yeah,
you you you
yeah,
have you've gone so in that you're now kind of going
yeah,
out, which is amazing.
yeah. I think I would be careful about using the word help versus serve, right?
Hmm.
there's a distinction in my mind. And the big part is I spend my time now, good 30 to 40 hours a week, at least 30 hours a week between jails and prison where I serve as a chaplain and homeless shelters where I serve with different services, so on and so forth. What it shows me as at a human level, there are parts of me that I have never, call it seeds that were not watered for a big part of my life. The seeds were there. I'm pretty sure it is there in all of us, all of humanity, but we're choosing to water some and we're choosing not to water the other, as the metaphor goes, right? And what it allows you first and foremost is, we are taught by Maslow's theory of hierarchy and needs and hunger and all the stuff. There is a lot of truth behind a lot of those things. But deeper than all of that, there's a human sense of dignity that we can offer to another person. And that can only happen when we have dignity within ourselves, that we have a sense of acceptance as who we are. Right. So when I go to the jail or prison and sit and look at the eyes of a guy and or a person and try to care for them, and my first thing is what constitutes a care, not what I think it is, as to understanding what does care mean to that person at that moment. And that requires the training and other things that would allow me to bring the kind of presence that is needed for that role. Same thing with you go to shelter. We think people in the shelter, I had certain opinions and thoughts about it. But deep inside, there's a huge sense of regret and remorse and shame, right? And you want to reach out and touch them and dignify them as to who they are and look at their eyes and thank them for the time and few moments you spend time with them. And you have a different appreciation for their lives, circumstances, right? And many other things, and that allows to unfold. And these are the unwatered seeds. This path allows, once you water them, these opportunities automatically appear. It's not like I had to chase for the opportunities. Once you water the seeds, you automatically, your lens changes in life and you start to see these opportunities and you feel there is a value or a service you can bring to that.
Mm. This is a wonderful wonderful metaphor to know that we all have within us this this capacity to
Yeah,
to to open up to this
to develop. Yeah,
to not only our dignity but to recognize the dignity of others.
right.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, I don't do chaplaincy work. I haven't worked with incarcerated individuals and all of that, but I do think that you're right in the sense of when you are being of service to somebody else or when you are in connection with somebody else in front of
Yeah,
somebody else, you can't apply assumptions onto that other person. If you're in that kind of relationship with them, you can't
right.
necessarily say, "Oh, well, you're you're in this organization or you're a part of this. You're societally you're at this level.
Yes,
Therefore, these are your concerns. These are the things that you ought to be thinking about, and this is how you're judged and all this." But if you look into their eyes, then you can kind of see, well, in this moment, I can see that the best way to care for you in this situation is to understand where you're coming from in this moment. And it's wonderful that you do that. How did you get involved with working with people that are incarcerated? Like, was that a big jump for you? Had you been doing that kind of work for a while before?
no, when I was going through chaplaincy training, the program required I put 100 hours of chaplaincy as a volunteer someplace. That's really what the requirement was. So I went to a senior citizen home, I went to a hospital, and just explore shadowing somebody for a day or two. And somehow I felt something in the jail and prison population that drew me to it. I can't literally to date. I've been doing this for nearly 5 years and I can't put my finger on what that is exactly, other than um, knowing I can grow as a person and still serve them at the same time. Okay, that's really what it came to. And and the more you tend to see that, we appreciate the notion of who we are is not just the name and the title and the label and the gender and all the stuff. The deeper inside, each one of us have our own conditionality, our own experiences, our own beliefs, our own knowledge, and our own memories. And even this conversation, Vincent and Ram having a conversation, we are sharing what comes out of these five things: our conditionality, our knowledge, our experience, beliefs, memories, so that we are connecting and engaging along those lines. And it is going to be different for every other person. So the first thing is to recognize and appreciate that, right? So when you are in a prison, you are not thinking about the acts that they are performing. Or that your question earlier, what you the question here, if I use my mind about presumptions and the presuppositions on this is the kind of people they are, all the stuff, I completely miss out on being present for them at that time. So the preconceived notions are hindrances in a way for that opportunity to dignify and connect with another person.
Certainly, and I really appreciate what you were saying about how uh, you recognize at a certain point that I can still grow and help someone and be of service to someone and care for someone at the same time. And I think
Right.
that at least in my mind, sometimes I get caught up in like, well, I'm not good enough yet to to help in this way, or I'm not ready to necessarily because I don't have the right training or I haven't achieved a certain level, then I can't be of service to somebody else yet. But it's like, well, if you allow yourself to be like to recognize that you are still growing, that you are still
Yeah.
somebody that is likely for a life for the lifetime going to be transforming themselves and growing and progressing, or if you want to put that word on it. But you can put that into action now. Just do
Yeah.
your best.
Yeah. I mean, we come from such an evaluative culture that brings in self-doubt if you're not careful. Am I fit? Am I good enough? Am I ready? This is all, I call it sometimes excess baggage that prevents us from truly experiencing the freedom or even truly exploring it. And it comes from years and years of schooling and evaluation.
Mm.
Mm. And I go back and as a parent or a kid, we all ask the question when the kid comes home from school, we ask, how was school today? Yeah. And the question would have been better, how do you feel right now? Right? So now, how are you today? How was school today is an evaluation of person's day as against how they are feeling at that moment.
And you weren't at school with the kid, so you can't know how school really was. You can know how your kid is now if they tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what does it mean for the kid to explore the day and answer the question? And what do? They shrug the shoulders and say, Good, fine." Right. I used to remember when my daughters were young, when I was bringing them from school. Maybe this is the fourth and the eighth grades. My daughters were about 4 years apart, or even younger than that. So I noticed if I ask the question, they're going to shrug and don't answer. So I changed my question into, "Hey, who got into trouble in class today?" Right. And then it got very lively. You know, this boy, dad, they're just going into the story. Right. It's what is in it for them to answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you have to if you're interested in the engagement quality instead of just the qualitative thing,
Yeah.
you want to find the in for them. You want to find what makes them uh get excited about sharing of themselves.
Yeah.
Uh and when it comes to like chaplaincy as well, and I know we're coming close to time, but I just wanted to ask about your eco chaplaincy, because
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily a thing, at least in uh, a social construct way, not something you can look directly in the eye of. I mean, the nature and like understanding the climate crises and the things that are befalling us now with eco issues. How do you what got you into that nature work and trying to bring more awareness and working with people as they experience climate crisis?
Yeah. It's it's a much needed question, and broadly, that's my personal idea and opinion in the sense. Every one of us thinks when we see something beautiful in nature, we immediately evoke, wow, this looks beautiful, a scenery, mountain, trees, whatever it may be, right? So I grew up along the things of particularly worshiping and revering trees. There's a reverential aspect to that. And that's my portal into the nature completely, right? As eco-chaplaincy, where in the infancy or as the concept was growing in, I got very intrigued and I wanted to explore this more, right? What the program taught me, many aspects of it, and it went along the following progression, is to break the duality of us and nature as two different entities. uh, and we are part of nature, nature is part of us, they're inseparable, and anything we experience as the total entity is beneficial for our own well-being. Right. The second is we use the word we are stewards of the land and all kinds of phrases, but more than the steward, there is an aspect of us. The pain in the nature is pain to us. So it's not like two different things. Climate change is not just the term the scientist and the meteorologist and others generally use. It is integral to how we experience what's going on in the nature. And when I say integral, it's not just the climate and the whatever is going on with the weather phenomena and others, it is all the way down to the people on the species that are suffering to the point we are at an existential crisis at a human race, but it's already shown it caused extinction to many species. Okay? And many scientists have said there are fewer birds by 10, 20, 30% than what they were 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or less than that, right? And just a couple of years ago, U.S. Fish and Wildlife announced extinction, that's last species, turning the lights off of 23 species, right? So we are seeing this effect really bringing that in. How can we not be sensitive to something like that? How can we not see oneness with some of this? How can we not really meaningfully do something about that? Because we are helping ourselves, we are serving ourselves in the process. Yeah. So in that process, unless we understand our deeper connection with nature and how this unfolding within us, and we carry all the emotions, feelings, and the sensation with us, we cannot be of service to others who are suffering as a result of this. So the eco-chaplaincy offers both those skills, gives us a deeper sense of one's own connection with nature, as well as ability to use this to help or serve the other people to deepen their connection and understand their emotional ups and downs associated with nature. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you have explored this path because it's very meaningful for you. I mean, you're someone that is in you went through the chaplain eco chaplaincy program, and now you are an instructor in that with the Sati Center for Buddhist Studies. And I really do appreciate your emphasis that by looking at how climate affects us for the better and for the worse. I mean, we're just all it's integral. We're all like linked together through this. We're not linked together as humanity, but we're also linked together with our environment.
Yeah.
And and I just wanted to note that your connection to trees. I know that I haven't been to in person to the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, but sure enough, I looked at Google Maps and there's a giant redwood just shooting right up right next to the
Right.
building. I was like, wow, that must have been, something. It's an
Yeah,
enormous,
yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
tree.
yeah,
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I just had just two quick questions. One is if there's anything that you'd like to promote, because I know you have a half day sitting soon with the San Jose Insight meditation community at the Friends Meeting House on July 19th. But I wanted to know if there's anything that you'd like to share or promote, have people learn about.
No, learn about is probably, I think, I'm also running in the nonprofit, which came from the Inside Meditation Center community, founded by my teacher, Gil Fronsdal, is the Insight World Aid. You see the plaque that framed a picture to the left of me. It's a nonprofit. We are bringing all of our growth and teaching and learnings into a way we can be of service to others. We are addressing issues related to hunger in our own communities, to the global communities. we are bringing issues related to human suffering and the grief we are experiencing. What can we do about these things, and what can we support each other? What can we bring service? And I've been holding grief circles for different groups on a fairly regular basis lately, unfortunately, because there's a need for it. And certainly, we are trying to get better, deeper involvement with the communities around where we are. So the Insight World Aid is an organization that I'm proud to be part of, because it gives us an opportunity to bring all of our spiritual path and the growth. Doesn't matter what faith you belong to, it's just a platform that opens up the ability to bring service to others. Yeah.
And how do we get how do we find that? Is there a website for Insight World
Yeah.
Aid? Yeah. Okay.
Insightworldaid.org is the
No,
easiest
no.
way to get there. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you for offering that. I mean, thank you for it doesn't sound like it's just this website. I mean, like it sounds like you have been as a person involved with it, holding grief c- uh, people that are grieving in community and
Yeah.
facilitating that. So thank you for doing that. And then my last question is kind of like a little bite-sized question, but do you have any advice for somebody who is right now walking the Buddhist path that you would have wanted to have heard as you were kind of early on coming through the Buddhist practice?
Yeah, advice is not, it's not a easy term, because it depends on the person and what is applicable to them, right? But having said that, uh, one thing I learned myself is not to be tentative about any steps I take, and literally trust, not that you're going to be sitting on the same thing for the rest of your life, but when you're in, feel that you are in. And I don't, maybe you can use the word commitment, but that sounds in our society much stronger a word than I would like it to be. And go in without a sense of skepticism or cynicism or doubt. That's what probably is a better way to look at it. Those things can hold you back from full experience. That's the only thing. It worked for me.
Ram, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This has been it was a wonderful conversation, and it was fascinating to hear about your journey. And thank you so much for offering so much in our conversation, but also for for going through the journey in to then be someone that can be of service and help in so many ways, and not help, but care for others in so many ways.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Likewise, Vincent, thank you for this opportunity. You're doing such a beautiful service here. Take care.